Good evening, everyone. My name's Dean Greguric. I'm the convener and facilitator of the ATA's electric vehicle group here in Melbourne. It's a group that's been running for about 4 or 5 years, and we're trying to foster interest in electric vehicles, get more people moving away from ICEs, internal combustion engines, and into more sustainable, lower carbon forms of transport, and hopefully minimising the amount of traffic congestion that we have on the roads. I've been a bike nut for many years. I broke my first bone on a bike. I've had lots of experiences on my first yellow Oxford dragster with 3 gears. If you know the old T-bar on the frame, for those that are of my vintage, you know what I'm talking about. No, it wasn't fluoro. Fluoro hadn't been invented then. No. It just seemed to be really bright. It was quite bright, and then for some unknown reason, I decided to paint it metallic brown. It was the 70s, and brown was in. So I've come to this whole thing from the perspective of being a bike rider. Forever 2 wheels. I think that riding a bike is a joy, and I don't encourage people to give up their pedal bike in order to take up an electric bike. That's not where we're coming from. It's not about superseding those lycra lizards and getting them to electrify their rides. What we'd like to do is to be able to get people who don't generally ride a bike, those people that maybe got a bike in their garage, in their shed, that they had all intentions of riding, but it got a flat tyre, or it was rainy, or you live on a hill, or so you've sort of given up on it, because really to ride a bike every day, it takes a certain amount of dedication. It's something that requires a level of fitness that needs to be maintained, and not everyone's up for that. You know, some people just want the bike as a form of transport. You know, not everyone wants to be part of the Tour de France every time they want to go to the shops. So that's where electric bikes come into their own. There's a few different varieties, but I think that first off, I might start with where the law is at the moment in this country. I have got an activist background for about 10 years, so I'm used to breaking bad laws, and I encourage people to break bad laws, because that's one way in which laws get changed to be more rational, to be more sensible, and it's the way that we progress in society. I think we're dealing with a bit of a nanny state. This is my little political rave. I think we're dealing with a nanny state, and I think that maybe we're not giving people the latitude to make mistakes, to have the latitude to try new technologies, to try new configurations, and I think the electric bikes have suffered on that front a little bit. Generally speaking, in Australia, the law is 200 watts as the maximum output that an electric bike is allowed to produce. Now, I work. My partner owns a company that sells electric bike kits, and so I've tested quite a few bikes, and I haven't found a electric bike or electric motor on the market that doesn't produce, at least momentarily, more than 200 watts. The law was written badly. It was an arbitrary limit set that had that wasn't really related to electric bike or electric motor technology, and so it needed to be amended. And the way it's being amended now is that in Victoria, and other states is taking it up as well, is that 250 watts is the legal limit, and that's the rated power output of the motor. Now, how that differs in the past, an electric bike, when you're starting off, that first little start-up point, there's a peak in the power, so the power will go above 200 watts. And if you want to know how much 200 watts is, have a look on the bottom of the blender that you've got at home, and it's probably rated at higher than 200 watts, right? So 200 watts is not much. Your vacuum cleaner, 1,000 or more, right? Just to give you an understanding of the comparison of how much power 200 watts is. Now, the only bikes that I know at the market actually that are 200 watts strict legal are the ones that posties are riding, because the lawyers have been over that with a fine-tooth comb, and the people that sell them have adjusted the controls to make sure they abide by the law. You know, good luck to them. It's a lawyer's picnic there on that front, and they've done what they can to meet that market, and you know, I applaud them for doing that. But I do think that limit is too low. But anyway, 250 watts as the rated power output. Most motors, as I said, will peak above 250 watts. I've seen some that will pick up to as much as 600 for maybe a couple of seconds before they drop down to 250 watts. Now, in order to have a 250 watt motor, you need to have something called a pedelec, which means that it's not throttle operated. It's that when you start to pedal, there's a sensor on the crank, and that sensor will tells the motor or the controller that you're moving, and then it'll engage the motor. And there's some sophisticated pedelecs that will apply the power more gradually, and there's those that not so gradual, just from stop to full power. Now, maybe I'm getting a little bit technical on the motor front and all the rest of it, but essentially, if we're looking at an electric motor on a bike, if I look at a hub motor, so most of the motors around are hub motors. So the motor's in the wheel around the axle. So you've got the axle, you've got the axle here, and then around the axle is a series of windings. Now, we all know we've seen in junkyards and stuff the electromagnet. It's you've got a piece of iron, some copper wire that's wrapped around it, and when a current's put through it, it turns it into a magnet. So that's essentially what the motor is. It's it series these windings around here, so they're all wound around there, lots of little different bunches, and most motors have what they call 3 phases. So there'll be 3 main power wires that go, and so there'll be phase A, phase B, phase C, phase A, phase B, phase C. So it's ABC, 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 all the way around, maybe 50 or 60 windings. And then around the outside, in a disc around the outside, which is connected to the wheel, is a series of rare earth magnets. These magnets are really strong. The sort of magnets you know that you put on your fridge, and you can only put, you know, and they slide down and they don't stick and all the rest of it. With these rare earth magnets, you put them on your fridge. They're really hard to get off your fridge. You know, I hold about 20 business cards in a stack on my fridge with a rare earth magnet. They are powerful. So you've got these electromagnets, and then you've got this series of magnets around the outside. Now, what these little electromagnets do is they switch on and off. In a series, they go from positive to neutral to negative to neutral to positive to neutral to negative to neutral. So if you've got a positive magnet on the outside, and then as the winding's coming around, it'll switch to negative, and it will get attracted to the magnet. And then when it's right above it, it will get switched to neutral. So there's no attraction. And then as it goes a little bit past, it'll switch to positive. And so the rare earth magnet and the electromagnet will repel each other. And that's the rotation of the motor. Now, we used to have brushed motors, and they used to use a commutator and stuff, but that's old technology. Now we've got a little electronic box, and that tells the that little box works out where the wheel is in its rotation in order to do that switching very fast, on off, on off, on off, like that. And so basically that's the basis of an electric motor. So that's what we're applying to bikes. The other part, so we've got the motor, we've got controller, and which is the bit that does all the electricity, and then we've got the battery. We used to have sealed lead acid batteries. Now we've got lithium batteries. Lithium's the 25th most abundant element on Earth. There is some problem with lithium mining, as there is a problem with all mining. Right? Whether you're mining bath salts, whether you're mining iron for your bike, whether you're mining aluminium, whatever you're mining. And so, you know, that's an issue. But what we can do, and the technology's not there, and I don't think it's quite, maybe it's not quite economically feasible at the moment, you can extract lithium from the sea. Right? So it's a matter of just processing seawater, extracting out the lithium, and so we could collect our lithium in this way. So there's a few different types of lithium batteries, and they vary in how long they last and how energy dense they are. Energy density basically means that you can have a small battery, lots of power. The battery technology is getting better and better to make smaller batteries that are more dense, have more power, and last longer. So you can charge them to full and discharge them to empty more cycles. In the past, maybe 300 cycles, right, which is not really a lot. If you consider, if you ride your bike every day and you charge your bike every day, then you're looking at a year, and then you're starting to notice a little bit of drop in the power and the capacity of your battery. We're getting better and better with the batteries. Now we've got lithium iron phosphate. Iron is in rusty iron. Lithium iron phosphate batteries. These are some of the best batteries at the moment. They can take a lot of abuse and they work well. There's also another technology at the moment, what we call tri-metal batteries. They have nickel, manganese, and cobalt in them. And although they're fairly new on the market, they're quite energy dense and they seem to last a long time. Right? So if you're looking at an electric bike, everyone will tell you it's a lithium battery, because no one will give you a sealed lead acid battery anymore. But everyone says lithium. Ask what sort. They'll say lithium ion. So it's like, well, what sort of lithium ion battery? Because there's different sorts. So quiz, if you're looking at buying one, quiz people on that sort of front. If they know their battery technology, they should be able to give you an answer. If they don't, well then maybe they need to learn a little bit more about what they're selling. There's also two main varieties of electric bike. There's one that has the hub motor, which I've just talked about, and there's another one which we call a mid-mount. So the motor is in the middle of the frame, usually around what we call where the pedals are, which we call the bottom bracket, usually mounted around there. Generally speaking, the mid-mount motors, they're quite good, and they allow you to use the gears on the motor so that using the motor more efficiently. But what we found is that the motors, the mid-mount motors, will either be a little bit noisy, and if they're noisy, they're usually built quite tough because you're hearing the meshing of metal gears. And if they're not noisy, then they've probably got some nylon parts in them, which means that that they're fine. But if you're really using it and giving it a lot of punishment, working it hard, the gearbox in the mid-mount can have problems to it. Okay. Now, as far as as far as efficiency goes, I think the mid-mount motors, of which I don't work on or don't sell, but the mid-mount motors, I think they're quite efficient. They're very efficient motors, and I do think if you're out there to buy a mid-mount motor e-bike, like Asiaco is one brand. There's other brands, but that's one. They make quite good motors. There's also a company called Bosch, which we know from drills and other power tools. They make quite a good mid-mount motor as well. So if you're looking at that style, they're very good. Now, as far as the hub motors, there's two main varieties. There's what we call the direct drive. So as I've explained before, we've got the axle, we've got the electromagnets around, and we've got the magnets around that. So one turn of the motor is one turn of the wheel. We've also got what we call mini motors, and they've got planetary gears in them. So it's a sun and planet gear. So there's a gear in the middle. There's a ring. There's a ring around the outside of teeth, and then there's three cogs inside. And those sort of motors, one revolution of the motor is around 5 revolutions of the motor is around 1 revolution of the wheel. And most of the e-bikes that we see on the market will be of this variety. The 200 or 250 watt motors, they're all that variety. They'll have nylon or composite gears. Composite is better than nylon. They're quite torquey, they're quite smooth, they're quite quiet, but because they're nylon or composite gears, they can shear. If you can imagine, if you're riding along, it's a bumpy road or bumpy track, and your wheel leaves the ground, it's spinning, and then the wheel hits the ground, and then it's a shearing force. So it's like a sudden braking or pulling on those teeth, and so the teeth will want to spin against and shear off the teeth. This happens with people who are heavy, or if you're putting extra power through your bike. These things can happen. But for the average person who wants something that's reasonably legal on the road, the mini motors are quite a good option. They're quite small. They're quite torquey for the amount of power they put in. Not too bad at all. Now, what else can we say about motors? Okay, top speed. Top speed, generally, you can say that the more volts, the higher the top speed. So if you've got a 36 volt bike, if you buy pretty much any bike, e-bike out there on the market will be 36 volt. Some say 37, but that's just, they're all the same. It's all the same battery technology. 36, 37 volts, the same. It's just the number written on. When a 36 volt battery is full, it's 42 volts. When it's empty, it's 31 volts. And so we say nominally it's a 36 volt battery, or nominally a 37 volt battery. Same. So if you want to go faster, then you add maybe a 48 volt battery, or maybe get 2 36 volt batteries, put them in series. So that means, if I'm not blowing people's minds there, if you want to do that, then 72 volts, then you'd be going really fast. Okay. Now, if you want power, if you want that torque to be able to get you up a hill, then that's about amps. The amount of amps that your battery can deliver to your motor. Different batteries can deliver different amounts of current. Now, if we think of a battery as, say, a rainwater tank, okay? So you've got the capacity of your rainwater tank, of your battery. So big battery, big rainwater tank. Now, a 48 volt battery will be a tall rainwater tank. So there's a lot of pressure on the hose at the bottom. So when you open that hose, when you turn it on, it's got the ability to push a lot more through. Now, if you want to put a lot of power into your battery, then you'll have a large hose. So that's the way I look at it, to compare electricity to water. I think it's a good way of comparing it. So the ampage that's delivered is like the size of the pipe that's delivering the power to your battery. Size of the pipe that's on your rainwater tank that's delivering it to where you need it. So different batteries have different abilities to deliver power. Most people who are selling electric bikes will have their battery, their controller, and their motor balanced so that the battery can give as much power as the controller and the motor is set to handle. And yeah, that's what I find on that front. Now, I might just say, is there any questions at this so far? Am I getting a bit too technical? Have I missed something that people would like me to mention? What about cost? Is anyone here considering getting an electric bike? Yeah. Can I ask what sort of? Can I ask you over there what sort of range or distance would you like to cover? Have you got a general commute that you maybe are looking at?
I'd like to go to like 30 or 40 kilometres.
Okay, 30 to 40 kilometres in one go. You'll find most electric bikes on the market will give you that sort of range. So depending on, the more hills, just in the same as with a petrol car, the more hills, the more juice, the more petrol you use. More hills, the more power you use on your bike. Most electric bikes out in the market will be able to do that. What sort of top speed? Are you feeling like a boy racer? Or
really? I don't know. Normal bike speeds.
Okay, normal bike speeds. The Lycra Lizards with their racing bikes, they'll be doing 35 to 40 kilometres an hour. Right? That's the sort of speed they do on a flat road. Most of those, if they're wearing the Lycra, as long as they haven't got the big pot gut, if they're not carrying the keg with them, then they'll be doing 35 to 40 kilometres an hour. That's sort of their average sort of speed. So an electric bike that's street legal, 25 kilometres an hour is the maximum amount of speed that they're allowed to deliver you. Now, I ride a mountain bike, a pedal mountain bike, as well as an assortment of electric bikes. For me to ride at 25 kilometres an hour, it's a pretty lazy Sunday afternoon ride. Yeah, I'm doing generally more than that, and so I feel that 25 kilometre an hour range speed is just a little bit too slow for me. But where it does come into its own, if you pedal during the flat, and when you get to the hills, when you get to Heart Attack Hill, then the time to be able to use that and get that extra 200 watts to help you up the hill. It's like having that hidden hand of assistance. Remember when you're a kid? I mean, I remember when I was a kid and my dad would push me around on the bike behind, and it's the way it feels. It's like someone's just pushing you along, just giving you a little assistance, like you've got a really good tailwind. That's the sort of feel. Can I ask you, sir, what sort of range and speed would you be interested in?
Probably similar. We don't actually have a commute. We used an electric bike while on a trip around Australia, and it was a very convenient means of getting to places which were otherwise inaccessible.
Yes, I think they're great. Of course, why would I be standing here if I thought they were rubbish? What I like most about electric bikes, I suppose, is that people like I find that I don't drive a car anymore, and so I do a commute of maybe 30 kilometres quite regularly when because I do event work. So I live out in Warrandyte, and I'll ride into town or into Flemington, and I'll do that distance in about between 45 minutes to an hour. But I'm using a 1,000-watt motor, and it goes up to about 45 kilometres an hour. I pedal the whole time. Two reasons I pedal. One, if you're sitting there on a bike not pedaling, this feels silly. If you've got pedals, you've got pedals. Why not just, roll your legs over? Also, if I'm doing 40 or 45 kilometres an hour and I'm not pedaling, the police will see me.
Yes.
Right? They say that's a bit odd, right? But if they're used to seeing people travelling at that sort of speed, maybe not on a sort of a big heavy cruiser, beach cruiser type bike that I usually ride. Usually on a more racing bike. So it's not out of the ordinary. It's something that it doesn't attract their attention. And I've been riding for 2 years, and never bothered me. I ride through police roadblocks at festivals and all the rest of it, and they just don't bother. Sometimes I look, go, oh, nice bike. I go, cheers, and then just take off into the distance. Yes, sir.
How would they know if it was a 1,000-watt bike, for example?
That's a very good question. Essentially, they don't. Right? They're not mechanical engineers. They're not electrical engineers. They don't know. And plus, the law is written in such a way that to measure the power of a bike, is it measured an input into the bike, or is the output at the wheel? The law is so rubbery on that front that if you want to be a little bit cagey, you can just go, look, it's 200 watt. You can buy 200 watt stickers off the internet and stick them over whatever you want. So, not that I'm advocating that you do that, or maybe I am, but the police just don't know, and I think that the way I see it is that the law hasn't caught up to the technology. We're moving faster than the law has been able to cater for. And so I feel like early adopters of electric bikes are like, we're activists. We're saying, look, you think that's bad, that I'm riding a bike that's overpowered. You're riding around in half a ton of steel using petrol, and I mean, petrol, for 1 litre of petrol takes 2 kilowatts of power to refine. Right? So you want to make 1 litre of petrol, it takes 2 kilowatts of power to refine it. Now on my electric bike, on 2 kilowatts, I can do at least 120 kilometres on 2 kilowatts of power. Right? Because every 48 volt, 10 amp hour battery is around about half a kilowatt. It's 480 Hoover Doovers. It's around about 120, maybe 150 kilometres that I can get from 2 kilowatts of power. And what does that cost when on total?
Kilojoules.
Huh?
3 kilojoules.
No, kilowatts. Kilowatt hours. I'm on 100% green energy tariff, so that's about 30 cents a kilowatt hour. So for 60 cents, I can travel around 120 to 150 kilometres at between 40 and 45 kilometres an hour. So for me, most people's journeys are not that long. Most people are, tootling to the shops and back. I live at the top of a hill. The shops are less than 3 kilometres away. My partner, right, won't ride a normal pedal bike to the shops because getting up that hill back to the house, bust a blood vessel on that. It's a 1 in 9 gradient, and it runs for about 800 metres. Now, for those of you who can do the sums, basically that's the sort of thing you get off, you push your bike up the hill, and you're puffing at the top. Look, the Lycra lizards ride past on a Sunday, and they're riding very slow at the top because it's really hard work. But on an electric bike, it's so much easier. It's so much easier. And my partner will now go down to the shops, load up the basket, come back, and she's puffing a little bit on a 200 watt or a 250 watt, but on the 1000 watt, it's fine. You know, we get up the hill with minimal amount of pedaling. Of course, you know, if you're going to work, you know, you want to avoid the traffic. Regardless of what the traffic is like, whether it's gridlocked or not, I get to where I need to go at the same time. So, you know, I really urge people to take up the option of an electric bike because it's lower carbon emissions, especially if you're on a green energy tariff, which I'm sure you all are because you all are very intelligent and smart and socially responsible people. It gives you some exercise and as much exercise as you want. If you want to exercise your heart out, go for it. You can still do it on an electric bike, just use the motor a little less. But if you're going, I had a big night, you know, ooh, I'm feeling a little bit jaded or whatever, then use the motor a little bit more. And you know, happy cycling. I was wondering if there's any more questions or yes.
What are your thoughts on the comparison of like converting a bike to an electric bike and buying one that's pre-made as an electric bike?
Okay. I'll just declare my interests. The company, my partner's company, does electric bike kits. So what I'd say is that I see bikes like the BH Emotion and other bikes like that. They are made amazingly. They are really lovely. They've got smooth pedalette, really they're integrated. They're a lovely, lovely kit. They're a lovely factory-made bike, especially those that have come from European pedigree, from European background. They are really very nice. But you're looking at $2,500 at least, and maybe that's a little bit too much. Some people spend that much money on petrol in 3 months. So, you know, keep that in mind when you're thinking about cost. You know, petrol costs a lot. So I'd say that they are beautiful, but the way the import restrictions are, you can't get one that's overpowered very easily, that's factory made. Unless, of course, people have seen the stealth bikes out there. I don't have any connection to stealth bikes, but when I sell enough of our bike kits, I'm going to get myself a stealth bike because they are just fantastic. They're like a motorbike with pedals, and I love them. They're, you know, I think they're fantastic, and I want one or two. So, but they're $7,000. So they're expensive, but they're made here in Melbourne, and they're fantastic. And I do advise you actually to go and have a look if you are a bit of someone who likes that. The other is that we've got the kits. Now, with the kits, you can get quite a cheap kit, ranging from say about $700 up to about $1,500, and you can fit them to your bike. You can get them more easily overpowered, so they can give you more torque, more speed. You can get larger batteries, right? Because range anxiety, we've all heard this term. Well, you can get batteries that are a little bit more custom made that let you do 100 kilometres rather than maybe the 30 to 50, which is the usual for most factory made bikes. And they're cheaper, and plus the joy of making something yourself, having a bike that you love, that you've spent some time, that fits you, you know, it fits like a glove, and you want to put a motor on it, fantastic. You know, I say go for it. You know, maybe they're not quite as refined, but you get more power, maybe more range for a lower price.
Sorry.
One more.
What sort of, and can anyone convert a bike, or is there sort of a degree of technical knowledge that's required to do that? Like how sort of hard is it?
Look, it's not that hard. There's a little bit of problem solving sometimes that might need to do, but generally the issue with bikes is I suppose is that you've got English, European and American style of components that are on bikes. So there's a bit of a variation. There's, so sometimes things don't fit quite well, and you might have to just jiggle things around a little bit. But basically, it's not that hard. It basically, for the hub motors, it's like take out the wheel of your bike, put in the wheel of the hub motor, fit the battery to wherever you want, either on a rack or elsewhere, put some controls on the handlebars, and the rest is what I call cable tie technology. Okay? So it isn't that hard. I've done a conversion in 20 minutes. That's the quickest I've done. And then I've had some conversions that have taken me, you know, a week because the bike has been just a difficult little so-and-so. So, and anyone who's selling you a kit, whether it's the company I work for or any of the others, that all will be on the phone and helping you out. If you ring them up, what about this? How does this work? They'll all help you out. You know, we're no different to the others on that front. So I think that you know, any reputable seller of a kit should be able to give you that guidance and advice while you're fitting. I think that my time is run out.
Thanks, Steve.
And yeah, thank you all for listening.
And before you go, about 3/4 of an hour, I asked to give us half an hour of very important technical lecture with very little notice. Thank you very much.
Oh, cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers. All right, well.